This Geologician episode is a recording of a tea talk that I did with Sabine Wilms. Sabine is one of the foremost trans profession. She has brought us fantastic books like Humming with Elephants and her recent two-book series, Channeling the Moon, which are two books that if you practice women's health with any kind of depth. Sabine does these tea time talks as part of her Imperial Tutor series. I was fortunate enough to be invited along, and I'm delighted to share this conversation with you. You can find out more about Sabine's work at Imperial Tutor or happygoatproductions.com. 那我们准备喝茶聊天. Let's drink a little tea and have some conversation.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. My guest for today's Tea Time Talk is Michael Max, who is just really awesome. And we talk sometimes on the phone anyway, and we never run out of stuff to talk about. So the goal today is, I know Michael is famous. I hope you all know of his Geological podcast, and I hope you all support it and are subscribers. If you don't know it, check it out. It's geological.com, right? Geological.com. And I think I put the link on the email that I sent to people. So somebody else turned their camera.
I'm gonna type it into the chat here so people can, because it's got kind of a funny spelling.
Well, I think it makes perfect sense.
Well, it does make perfect sense, but it's got a funny spelling.
Considering how quirky you are, geological, sure. It's
My patient named the podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great. I had an astrologer tell me that my professional role in life, the Bazi thing, was Imperial Tutor. So that's how I came up with the Imperial Tutor thing. It's like, I am so not an institutional college professor. I do not want to give grades. It was killing me.
I went to a school that didn't give grades.
The school where I taught, they started out, it was just pass fail, and it was awesome. And then
this wasn't pass fail either.
It was just no grades.
No, it was evaluations.
Oh, it was the college.
The Evergreen State College.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Perfect.
And it was, so it wasn't just pass fail. It wasn't like show up, win or don't win.
Yeah.
You had to show up and participate. And the way you showed up and participated is that you would have to be able to critically assess where you'd been in that quarter. You had to write an evaluation about yourself and where you'd been, and what you did well, and how you knew it, and what you didn't do so well, and how you knew it, and what you're going to do about it, and how that was getting you to where you were going.
That's awesome. Which is how you
write an evaluation of your teachers. You had to evaluate your teachers, and not like I liked them or didn't like them.
Yeah.
But again, very cogent, thoughtful, useful feedback. So that's what we learned to do. So when you get out of Evergreen, you got a stack of paper like this that's your transcript, and it's a hell of a lot easier to get an A, B, C, or whatever, than just sit down and once a quarter critically assess yourself.
I mean, from the perspective of the professor, I was teaching 7 classes a term with 50 students in them, so having to write that many evaluations would have put me over the edge. But then I was constantly grading the whole time, and doing the calculation at the end was bad too. So it was one of
the difficulties for the Evergreen professors. They had to write all these evaluations for their students. So there was a huge participation back and forth back then.
It's the whole institutional model.
Well, institutions are, with the influence of the internet and interconnectivity and all kinds of things, institutions are dramatically changing these days. And they have been for a while. Everything from taxi cabs to hotels. Colleges are next.
Yeah. Who knows? I think it's time for. Well, it's really interesting to see how transmission of knowledge is happening in Chinese medicine, and you are one of those figures who are, I think, I mean, you are starting to offer a fair amount of CU classes, which is really great. But I think, and I know people who've taken your classes and who've really, including beginning students all the way up to people like Brenda Hood, who, by the way, Brenda Hood says hi to everybody, and she's really sad. A truck took out her internet line behind her house last night, and she is unable to be here. Otherwise, Cosmic Cat would have joined us today. She was really excited to be here today. So she says hi. And she'll be watching it later.
Here in spirit, yeah. Great.
But so, I know people from beginning students to people like Brenda who get so much out of your classes and your theological podcasts, and I listen to them and I love them. You're like the only podcast that I ever listen to. So really, I want to get this question in before we get a conversation.
Okay.
I want you to share with everybody, really, you have done hundreds, if not thousands of interviews at this point.
No, not thousands. No, but hundreds. Yeah, hundreds.
I mean,
I did like 80 some odd for everyday acupuncture, which then turned into geological. There's about 100 and I think 159 went up this week. So,
that's a lot.
North of 200.
That's a lot. So where
I mean, when you think about like how many patients an acupuncture sees in a month, I mean, there's a lot of interviews depending on how busy you are.
That's true. That's true, and that's my next question. But my first question.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted.
No. I'm determined to get my 2 questions in. So the second question is about listening. I want to hear what you have to say about listening. So that's the second question. But the first question is really, if you step back from all these interviews you've had with all these practitioners, some fairly new, some really experienced, and I love how you interview practitioners from all these different backgrounds. Really, you really celebrate the diversity of our profession, where you don't judge people. You're not like, I'm a classical person, I'm a traditionalist.
I do judge people. I judge people all the time. Are you kidding? I'm judgy. I judge people. Of course I judge people.
And you interview all these people.
I'm constantly judging people. But when I'm trying to have a conversation, understand somebody, I just, it's helpful to put it to the side. It's not that it's not there. It's absolutely there. Are you kidding? I just put it to the side. Okay. I mean, sometimes I have patience. Yeah, go ahead.
So back to the first, that's part of the second question.
Okay.
So the first question is, what, if you step back, what do you think is like some of the most important stuff that you've learned in these many, many years of interviewing and listening to practitioners?
That's a head scratcher. I would really say where I do my learning is in my clinic with my patients. That's where, I said I've cut my teeth on what listening is. When I'm sitting with our colleagues and having a conversation, I'm just doing what I do in clinic, except the conversation is with a colleague. It's not with a patient. What have I learned? God, that's a really tough question. That's like the question you ask someone when they're in their 80s, not their 60s. Could we just like let's just hold that. We're just going to let that float. Something may come up.
What I really appreciate most about you, and I do the same thing you do. I go to these conferences, and what I love about the conference and what I'm really starting to miss more every week is going to these conferences and just sitting at the table with my colleagues. And
Me too.
being around kindred souls and listening
Yes.
to
And
each other.
discovering new kindred souls, people that we're connected to, we didn't know we were connected to.
And it's like at these conferences you meet, like the way we met, we didn't even know each other, and we met. You happened to be in Portland, and and boom, like Zoe, I don't think we've ever met in person. Your head is just up there once. I'm sorry, like okay, but I feel like, Zoe, if you came to Whidbey Island, we'd go and have dinner and we'd have an amazing, wonderful time. There's like this instant connection with a certain group of people because we're all equally weird or whatever it is. And
Yeah. We share a certain common interest. We have there's a thread that connects us.
what do you think that is?
Well, the number one, we do Chinese medicine or East Asian medicine or Oriental medicine or what,
So
I mean,
how does it
I don't
change?
even know what to call it anymore, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, whatever this medicine is that we do, that's been around for, thousands of years. It's transition, it's transited through different countries, different cultures, different times. We share this. We share the stream of what this is. That's been shared by people, we love to talk about our history. So it's been shared a long time. We're part of that stream. We're part of that current. And so we have that in common.
And how do you
Now,
think it's changed us? Like this kind of goes back to a question that Luciano had a few weeks ago from Chile, and I don't think he's here unless he's shown up late. Um, about self-cultivation and what makes us practitioners, and I include myself in there as a practitioner of Chinese medicine. I'm not a clinical practitioner, but I feel like I
you're the
practice
imperial
what I
tutor.
preach. I don't
That's a
know.
kind of practitioner.
Yeah, it is in the traditional sense.
Hmm.
So what makes us practitioners?
I don't know. I think that everyone's got their own individual story for that. Something drew us, something sparked. There was something, there was like a spark in like dry tinder that let something, sort of catch fire. And how we keep that fire alive, how that fire informs us, how that, takes us into the future, gives us the wherewithal to spend our days and time, learning and studying and practicing and learning and all that. I don't know. It's a little mysterious. I hear the word cultivation, and on one hand it's like, ooh, yeah, cultivation, and the other part of me goes, I don't know what the fuck that is. I mean,
I, I, I
what's cultivation other than like having some kind of curiosity or following your interest on something or just having something that um, it's like something that calls us into the future. It's something that calls us into, this day and calls us into the next day.
hmm.
I mean, we all have that. I don't know what to name it. I don't even think I want to name it.
I
Right?
mean, I like the Sun Tzu. That's where I have my head right now, nurturing the inner nature, heavenly nature. That's where I'm. That
Mm-hmm.
idea of nurturing my Xing, and and I don't do. I have to admit,
Wait
I
a minute. You
don't do
just
my
said nurturing your Jing.
Xing.
Sheen.
Xing. I'll type it.
Right. Your heart. Your Sheen.
Nope, nope, nope.
Your mind.
That one.
Oh, your Sheen.
Yep, that's the title of Sun Miao's volume on self cultivation. What I call self cultivation
Oh, I
is
didn't expect
it's
that
Yang
one.
Xing. You're not
Yang
nurturing Sheng. You're not nurturing life. You're nurturing the inner. I translate it as heavenly nature, and at first I kind of poo-pooed that translation,
Yeah,
but
yeah, no, I can see it. I mean, Xing is interesting because it has the heart radical in it,
yeah.
right? There's a heart
And there
radical
is
there
a
on the left.
connection to heaven versus Ming, which has the connection to earth. So the Xing and the
Mm-hmm.
Ming together form the human in the middle between heaven and
Yeah.
earth.
Well, and you got the Xin and you got the Sheng, the generative, right? It's like the generative aspect of the heart in a way. Isn't I see that in that character. Yeah, nourishing the Sheen, which also can mean form.
No, that's a different.
That's a different Sheen, right? That one up there.
That's this one.
My
I
Chinese is
know.
definitely rusty. No, but
That's
I thought
more.
this one also meant form. It means
Nope.
sex as well, doesn't it? Doesn't it also mean
Yep.
sex?
Yep. It means
Okay.
sex.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think that is more of a modern meaning. I don't
Hmm.
know when that meaning. Yeah, that's not a. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the Lionel, the other Xing, that's the other Xing. That's this one, like your family
Right.
name.
Yes.
That's a different Xing with the woman radical instead of the heart radical. But yeah, so Yang Xing, and I actually gave a lecture in Korea at a conference for Asian traditional Asian, what they call East Asian traditional East Asian medicine,
Mm.
and my lecture was about asserting that there is a difference between Yang Xing and Yang Sheng in the
Oh, yes.
text. And I'm going to have Michael Stanley Baker on in I think 3 weeks, which I'm super excited about, 3 or 4 weeks. And he wrote a master's thesis on medieval practices of, on the intersection between religion and medicine and Taoism and cultivation and medical practice and all of that. So he's the only other person, or he's one of the very few people who've worked with the material that I'm working with. And I go back to his master's thesis all the time, actually.
Yeah.
So
So,
I want
so
to ask.
what we're talking about here, this Sheen is, I think I'm kind of pointing to that in what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I'm working with right now. And Sun Meow is talking about diet. He's talking about sleep, avoiding wind, not going to sleep with damp hair, which is really bad. I do this all the time because I swim at night and then I go swimming, then I go to sleep. So I'm really bad at that. And hair here doesn't dry because it's so damp. It's still, it's like, you look outside, I have to have the light on. It's July. And I took my warm sweater off. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I remember the
Summer
Northwest.
days. It's pathetic. It's July. So nothing dries here. Um, but and then what I'm working on right now, yesterday, is a passage on Brahmanic massage, Anmo, from India, and it's talking about all these movements and I'm just working on translating that. And then I went swimming yesterday, and all of a sudden, and it was kind of choppy, and I don't really know how to do the dolphin kick. I've never had a swimming lesson since high school. I'm
Mm.
not a I just love the water and I just go swimming. So when I do the master swim class and the coach yells at us and tells us to do the dolphin kick, I just about drown. But yesterday, it was like, I don't know what got into me. And I did like a dolphin type movement. And I was just moving. And I think it was because I had been translating this, these instructions on Qigong.
Yes.
And I was like
Yes.
moving, my hip and my waist and my shoulders and 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 I was remembering how I was translating the stuff about crossing your arms and putting them over your head and twisting to the
Mhm.
side as if you were pushing a mountain and doing the tiger gazing thing. And and so for me, like that's my Yangxing, I think, is playing in the water and doing this like weird swimming thing that's not even swimming, that's just like playing like a dolphin in the waves. So that's my idea of
Well, if you're playing like a dolphin in the waves, I mean, dolphins are pretty good swimmers. So I don't know if I'd say that's not swimming. I think that's a
well
kind of swimming.
well, I'm just not
And
moving. Anyway.
well, I mean, it's not the swimming that you've learned, but it's the swimming that you're learning. And in some ways, you're learning it from Sun Miao. This is why
Isn't this
I
cool?
find Chinese medicine, the work we do to be so um, invigorating and delightful, even though it drives me crazy at times, but mostly it's delightful because we can read something or we're working on something, like you working on a translation, or maybe I'm reading something in some book, or trying to figure out how to help a patient in clinic, or uh, talking to someone on a podcast and getting new ideas in my head that I hadn't thought about. Like, oh, I connect that with that, huh? Wonder what I'll do with that. And it's like this stuff, it's like this information goes in. It goes into, this thing that we call us. And then as we go through our life and we have experiences, be it swimming, be it with patients, be it, with your spouse, out and about in the world, who knows? But these things that we've been kind of chewing on or noodling on or somehow exposing ourselves to in a thoughtful way, they begin to arise in our experience. And this is why it takes so damn long to like figure out what this Chinese medicine stuff is and how you use it, because it's not a flow chart. I mean, we learn it as a flow chart, right? The books are flow charts and boxes and all those things, but that's like scaffolding
Mm.
around something else. And as we learn to work with that something else, the scaffolding comes down. And then just a passage that you're working on can show up in your swimming, right? Or something one patient says will clue you into something that lets you help a different patient that they're not even connected to, right?
And that's where the beauty comes in.
Yeah.
You know, like I have these two students right now who are in France, and they're very frustrated. They're at a school that's not giving them what they need. And and
How
they
do they know? How do they know it's not giving them what they need?
oh, I think it's pretty obvious.
Really? Well, I don't know. I mean, I remember when I was in school.
They their main concern is that their teachers are just complete. They're not adequately trained.
Mm.
They're, it's just very crude, and they're educating themselves, so they ask questions and the teachers are not able to answer and are deflecting. Anyway, I can no, they're these are very sincere guys, and they have this idea that in the US we have this highly advanced level of education, because they just fantasize about in the US where you can go to school full time in Chinese medicine for 4 years, and we must be so deep in our practice of Chinese medicine. And in a way, I agree with them. And now you have these doctoral programs, so you have these people who are graduating who are incredibly educated in that left brain, brainy, analytical sort of way. But there's another aspect to the medicine that I think is really, really important. And just because you have a doctorate and you're an expert now in talking about complicated formulas or whatever, there's a piece that is missing that I think maybe somebody like Zev Rosenberg, who got is Zev here?
Zev is here. I see his
Zev is
picture.
here? I can't tell. Oh yeah, Zeph is here. So somebody like that who was trained, and you, right? I mean, no, well, you have received a lot of your training in China. Oh, that's another
Some,
question that I want to
some.
talk about.
Yeah. Okay.
Difference. But is there some way where if the scaffolding is not as advanced or as strong as over, like I feel like maybe what we're creating in the current institutionalized education system for Chinese medicine in the US is a really, really strong scaffolding that is kind of covering the,
Maybe.
the
I mean,
beautiful
I don't know. I'm not
facade.
really involved with schools, but I do have a few thoughts on that. So first, my understanding is traditionally in China, my experience wasn't quite this, but it sounds right. People would study in an apprenticeship way, of course, and they would watch their teachers for years without ever having anything explained to them. They would just follow their teachers, and they would sweep their floors and make their herbs and sit in clinic and do this and do
Yeah.
that, and they'd watch their teachers. They'd like learn by watching like for a long time. Then eventually the teachers might explain something to them if they'd been able to pick up enough of what the teacher had to offer by just being in the presence and being observant and paying attention themselves. And I think this aspect of paying attention ourselves is very, very important. And learning to be able to take concepts and then see how they work in reality. Clinical results are the gold standard. It's like what makes for a good doctor. You can have all kinds of head knowledge, But if your clinical results aren't commensurate, then it's, it's book knowledge, which has its place. I love books, I got books all over. But there's that experiential part. Um, there's, how do I say this? So I remember one of my teachers when I was in school. There's a visiting teacher, actually. And one of the students was saying, "Oh, are we going to a good school?" Everybody wants to know they're going to a good school, right? We go to a good school. And this person said, "Well, so here's the deal. If you're a good student and you go to a good school, you'll learn 12% of what you need to know to practice medicine. If you're an average student and you go to an average school, you learn 8% of what you need to know to practice medicine."
And there's something, if you're a good student and you go to a bad school, you may, there,
I don't,
you may
I
learn
don't know.
so much. No,
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. And there is no such thing as there's just a school that's better, more appropriate for one person. No,
I
no, no.
suspect it's more appropriate for someone. And I mean, it depends on what you're looking for as well.
Yeah.
There's some schools these days that are very big into integrative medicine. If integrative medicine is your bag, it's a great school to go to. There's other schools, they have maybe more of a bit of a classical approach. And if the classical approach is something that resonates with you, then that's a good place for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of what we learn from our patients. We get some building blocks. We get some scaffolding. Ideally flexible bamboo scaffolding.
So that the current earthquake doesn't take it all down.
Well, there's that. Yeah. I mean, we all know the thing about bamboo because it's hollow on the inside. Kongshin, right? It's hollow on the inside. It grows node by node. So it's got this like strength that comes from like knowing its place step by step, each node, but also empty on the inside. That's actually where its strength comes from.
Which takes us to the heart. I've been thinking a lot about the heart because I had to do this lecture last week on the role of the heart in fertility, and the heart being the organ that is standing. The heart is the organ that is mediating the outside environment to the inside. So the heart has to be empty. I don't know. Talking about the heart is kind of like poking the poking a stick into the beehive, which is how I got my swollen eye.
Yes, you were poking the bees. You were messing with the bees.
I learned the hard way. Yeah, so but that's how you learn, right?
Maybe.
When you're Sabine.
I mean, we can learn the hard way. We can learn the easy way. Just because we had a hard lesson doesn't mean we necessarily learn the lesson. We might shut down to it. It might actually become an obstacle.
That's true. That's true.
That. I'm still listening to you. I just want to comment. I'm just meta-commenting for a moment. I'm still listening. We're still talking, but I'm going to go make some tea. So I'm disappearing from your screen, but we're still connected. Thanks to the magic.
Okay, very good. Make your tea. So everybody else, feel free to jump in here and how I envision today's conversation and how I really envision all these conversations. And I think when I have two conversation partners, it's more of a three-way conversation. But when I'm just talking to one person, it's more open to anybody else to comment. Like Lionel has written a lot of comments. Feel free to jump in here and comment as well. Anybody else, if there's something that we're saying that makes sense or doesn't make sense, or if there's something that you want to ask Michael. I mean, Michael is one of those people who's been in practice for a really long time. And
I'm in mid-career, 20-ish years.
Yeah.
Not that long.
So what have you learned? There's Lionel. Thank you for
Hey, Lionel.
um, Lionel is the reason why I'm working on Sun Meow. He poked me and is like, please do the Sun Meow volume. Like, what the hell was I thinking? No, it's so hard right now. I'm learning all
I
these
think all
weird.
of us have that experience. It's like, oh, that looks interesting. How hard could that be? And then, you get into it, it's like, oh, what was I thinking?
What was
Thank
I
God I
thinking?
didn't know. I would have never started.
I know, but I'm too far into it now to quit.
And it's so good, Sabine. It's so enlightening, honestly.
It's taking me for a spin. It's but like yesterday, it was like, yes, last night I was swimming and it was like, oh, there's the reward. There's the delight of it's like it's this really hard work and and I'm lying there in my bed and like there's advice in there like don't sleep like a corpse because when you sleep like a corpse you're open to evil chi coming in. So now I'm like lying there at night and I'm like, oh, I'm in the corpse position. Oh no, I better sleep on my side now. So I'm getting a little paranoid.
Well, and keep in mind, Sun Tzu Miao was one person. He's a luminary in our field. I like to remember that the greats who we look at, right? Li Dongyuan, Jiang Chongjing, Sun Tzu Miao, all Zhu Danxi, all, our pantheon of great practitioners. I think we should be very careful that we don't cherry pick their experience and Instagram it. It's, oh, these amazing practitioners, they were amazing all the time. They fucked it up. They made mistakes. There were days that, it did not go well with them, right? You can't be on it all the time. I mean, I get it that they're luminaries and, in their worth, it's like seeing what they have to say, but I just think we still have to like run it through our own experience. Consider it, run it through our own experience. Does that corpse pose really make sense? What was he talking about? We've all
Well,
had
it
great
does.
ideas
No,
that were proven wrong by reality.
but it totally makes sense when you think about sleeping like this. How open are you to things coming in? And when you're sleeping and when you're dreaming, I have really strong dreams. And do I really want to open myself up? It's a different way of thinking about interacting with the environment. That there are, in the traditional Chinese way, there are there are spirits and ghosts all around us, and you can call it chi or whatever. And when we're sleeping, we are less anchored to our body. So it makes perfect sense that sleeping like this, you're a little more protective than if you're sleeping open, like boom, please, all these demons and ghosts, and have a field day. Doesn't that make sense?
I don't know if I buy that.
Well, I'm sleeping on my side these days.
I'm a fan of sleeping in the way that's comfortable to sleep.
I know. There's
What's
that.
the best way to sleep? The way that you sleep best.
Yeah.
Just
And
very
we have
simple.
Isn't to reject something without accepting it.
hold on. You're
Through like an alien. I think the internet connection was a little slow, Lionel. Could you say that again?
Let me try again. Isn't to reject something without experience just the same thing as accepting it without experience?
Say that again. Sorry, I didn't quite catch it.
Isn't the problem of accepting something from the luminaries without experience, isn't that similar to the problem?
Oh, you're cutting out. I think you have
Cutting
to
out.
type it.
You could, Lionel, type it into the chat. That might be a little better. I'm sorry. I prefer that we could speak, but thanks to the power of the internet, maybe we can.
Yeah, and just
we
to
can use
warn you,
text as
Lionel
well.
asks really hard questions.
Oh, okay.
They're good.
Wait a minute. I'm the one who asks questions around here.
No, not this time.
No, I'm in trouble.
Okay, speaking, accepting without experience, similar to the problem of rejecting without experience. Oh dear. See, I warned you.
I love Shudatsun. Lionel, I would agree, and I think this is well said. It's two sides of the same coin that we either accept something without experience or we reject something without experience. Both of those, we have an opinion in our mind, but we don't actually have experience of the thing. And so whether we're accepting or rejecting, it's the same thing. We're not opening to what that experience is. I could not agree more. That's really well said. And thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah,
That's yummy.
that
Mm,
makes a lot of sense. I'm
yeah.
just thinking of all my work that I've been doing in the last few years around yin and yang. And, working for me, every
You haven't
book.
graduated to the five elements yet?
Oh God, no, 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 no. Every once in a while, I think about metal because I have a daughter who's super, super metallic, and I'm trying to appreciate her metal. I'm working on her metal, but no,
Yeah.
no.
You know what you might want to do? Work on the fire instead. It'll help you with your daughter instead of understanding metal.
And she's got some of that too.
Turning through the five elements. Yeah, okay.
That's why I personally have to go swimming every single night.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
live
you're
in
going
the
swimming
forest.
in the cold water to help disperse that metal.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I have been thinking about yin and yang for many
Hmm.
years now. And I guess I kind of, I mean, Lionel kind of asked me to do the Sun Miao volume, and I took the bait. Um, not just
Thanks,
because I
Lionel.
can't say no, but because it's something that's been brewing for a long time, and I've wanted to do this forever. And I pick projects because it's something that I need to learn about. And I learned so much
Me
in
too.
that book, Humming with Elephants, about yin and
Yeah.
yang. And just doing that, translating that, and sitting with that for so many years, first teaching it at the university, teaching it to the students. And
Mhm.
I knew it was this really, really deep stuff. Like yin and yang, it's so simple, and yet it is so deep. And there's no way you can really e- explain that. I mean, Brenda Hood does an amazing
Well, yin
job
and yang
in
are
her
not
fundamentals
things.
classes.
They're not things. When we start to thingize yin and yang, it gets
So
a
how can
little
you
weird. Although things are included in it.
how can you really you can tell people, okay, pay attention, and you can tell people, okay, ask questions, and then go and experiences, right?
Pay attention and ask questions. So if you ever want to do a podcast, the essential ingredients are pay attention, ask questions. And I actually think it's the same thing in clinic. Pay attention, ask questions. Hi, dog. That's a cute dog.
No, there's mine.
And that one is too. Yeah, no, I mean, but I mean, I'm glad you bring this up, Sabina, because when I think about yin yang, I remember like first studying, it's like, oh yeah, yin and yang, it's like it was kind of cool to be like, oh yeah, we're working the yin and yang. And then you get to the point where it's like, what the fuck is this stuff? Right? Or when the teachers go, oh, that's it comes down to yin and yang, right? We hear this phrase a lot from teachers, right? Well, it comes down to yin and yang. And I remember as a student, I'd be like, I got no idea what they mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And I still don't have a great idea of what it means, except I've been chewing on it for 20 some odd years. And every now and then something will kind of land and I'll go, that there's an expression of yin. It just kind of like floats through, and I'll catch it. Oh, that's an expression of yin. Oh, that's an expression of deficient yang. Well, this isn't really a yin thing. That's more deficient yang. It'll just kind of float through. It's not like it lands, like a big bright board, that kind of thing. I mean, I'm looking out my window right now, and there's summer flowers, and You can look at it at any moment in time and see some are buds and some are blooms and some are falling off, and you'll see something in any one particular moment. And part of what you see is what's there, and part of what you see is what you bring to what's there. And so this thing with yin and yang is I don't like using the term constant inquiry because it's not an inquiry, but it's more of it's just one of the things, as a practitioner, that if we keep it kind of in the back of our mind in a way, and if we do things like read Humming with Elephants, for example, you were talking about earlier in this conversation about translating Sun Samyao and how it's informed your swimming. So if we take something like Humming with Elephants, which is, it's a beautiful book. If you guys don't have it, you should get it. Because it's fantastic. It's got zhuangzi in it. It's got, and it's written with love. I cannot say enough good things about Humming with Elephants, because you can read it and then you just go out in the world and you observe and look and watch and just, notice that stuff might percolate up. And, we're talking about, you brought up the issue of book learning and, what we need to learn in school. And we need to work hard to learn this stuff. We need a good scaffolding. We need a solid foundation. So that we've got something to stand on that will give us enough years of practice and enough experience in working with people and reading enough different books and different perspectives and talking to people that are not like us, that the stuff begins to percolate in a way that it's not something that my teacher, Dr. Xie, told me, it's something that my experience told me. And that takes time. And it takes the help of all kinds of resources, including poetry, music. I mean, whatever brings something of joy and connection to your life gets woven into our medicine as well. Let's not forget that.
And really, for me, the Humming with Elephants was the first book where I did bring something of my own, where I dared to, bring in, or not something of my own as much as I brought in other people. I brought zhuangzi to the table, where it was like.
You also brought your love for zhuangzi.
I did.
And that clearly shows. It clearly shows. So Lionel wrote in the chat here a few minutes ago. He said, I wish Chip was still around for this. I wish he was too. And this is poignant. I remember having a conversation with Chip just before he got sick. And we were talking about some things. And he said, I can't remember the exact words because, the exact words don't matter, but the sense of the moment is what matters. And he said something to the effect of that at a certain point with this medicine, we have something to say. We're the only ones who can say it. And we can let that pass or not. But it's up to us to take what's ours to share and bring that into the world. And that will ask everything of you. And it's a lot of risk. It's huge risk. You're very exposed when you bring something in that is deeply informed by the work that you've done. And so for you to bring in your love of zhuangzi in the discussion of yin and yang is a very generous and courageous thing to do. It's worth noting.
And it was very scary. And, the main thing for me was I felt like I was just stating the obvious. And I honestly thought I would offend people like you, because it just seems like everybody knows the zhuangzi stories. So the fact that I'm picking up pages of talking about zhuangzi, when really you're reading the book to learn about Su and Five, that was for me, that was the piece where it's like, well, am I not just staying, like, who am I to say anything about yin, to add to the conversation about yin and yang?
Right. And who are you not to when you have something to add to it?
But how do I know? How do you know when what you have to say is is when you've reached that point that Chip is talking about? Like,
Oh,
your own
you get a diploma and there's somebody's signature in authority who says it. Now you know.
Sabine, I learned that about adding the Chuangzi in there from Elizabeth Rochat,
Okay.
because, and it became very clear to me that the people who were writing these medical books were also extremely educated in the other classics. So that in the meaning of a character, they were playing on what was in Chuangzi or what was in Lao Tzu or what was in Confucius or what was, that if you know those texts, that's what gives the meaning, fuller meaning to the, so I thought that was great and natural.
And actually, I have I've met Elisabeth a couple of times, and I'm glad you're bringing her into the room. I love this, how we're bringing all these different people into the room. The first time I met her, I was at Ken Rose's in the Redwoods, and we were talking about, and she was talking about Zhuangzi.
Oh, yeah.
He was reading Zhuangzi, and it was just the perfect way. And yeah, I was really sad that we had to cancel that retreat that we had planned with Elisabeth. And Zev, that was a major bummer.
Yeah, I just did a seminar with her on Zoom the other day, and she was talking about the concept of Ming.
Oh yeah.
And she had, I don't know, 20 different people that she was translating from on their different, from the classics, on how they added to the concept of Ming. So it, she does that, and that's why that book reminded me of the same kind of process, and it's in itself is really quite wonderful, and a great advantage for students to read it so they have some sense of classical understanding of the medicine rather than this dry
Classical
stuff.
thinking. It's a whole different framework to look through the frame of Chinese medicine, to look through the frame of, old Chinese thought, especially generations down and continents away and languages away.
I mean, my main thing is just that what I see in the ancient literature, it's so deep and it's so beautiful. And it's just delightful, and it is nurturing. It is so deeply nurturing to read the classics for me. And I couldn't imagine only having an English translation, no matter whether it's whatever translation it is. It can be the best translation. You won't get that the beauty of the characters and the richness of, like, Zoe, what you just said about the all the connotations of a single character, the way it was used in a poem from the Shijing, from the classic of poetry, or by a little phrase from Confucius. All of these things are lost, and there's no way you can replicate that in an English translation. So that was really my concern with that book. Is I want people to I want practitioners to understand. I want people to really appreciate the classics for what they are, instead of this dry assignment that is somehow part of, oh, this is the root of your medicine, you have to read it even if you're not getting it.
Well, this is the beauty of what you bring to this, Sabina, is that, most people can't read characters. It takes some time and some effort. And all that is in there. You have the wherewithal to see it. You have the wherewithal to express it. And because you can take aspects of that, and you do take aspects of that. And especially with Humming with Elephants, you have taken aspects of this and made it available to people that don't read Chinese. It's in there. And that's what I mean by that. You put your love into it.
Yeah. And I learned so much in it.
We always learn a lot when we do that kind of work.
I know, right? So what are you working on right now in terms of Do you have a, I mean, I know you're putting together a lot of classes.
Yeah, well, we've got some classes. Um, I'm rebuilding. I'm looking to put the podcast on a whole new platform, actually, so that it will support more online learning and online learning communities. So that's a big technical lift. So
And
there's that piece.
there's a lot of that going on right now. So, to get back to that conversation about institutional learning, I think and it might have something to do with the coronavirus. There might be, I'm trying to find a damn silver lining in the current situation. I mean, I'm so missing the conferences, but maybe there's a silver lining in these learning communities, in these ways in which people are coming together in, I don't know, because Sharon Weizenbaum is doing something up like that as well. And then Genevieve is doing her class.
Yes. I think we have some potent opportunities. And it's not the same as being in person. And yet but it's not a but, it's an and. And at the same time,
yeah.
I mean, here we are. I mean, it'd be really nice if we could all be hanging out at Whidbey Island with you, but that's not possible. Even if there was no corona, this couldn't happen in the way it's happening right now. So there's a place for this internet-mediated communication. And I think especially in these smaller forums where people are actually like eye to eye, heart to heart together, as opposed to, things like Facebook or Twitter or, these other things where it's very easy to decloak, snipe off a few snarky things and then, disappear. Yeah. That I don't think is as helpful. It's like the worst aspects of being human beings. It's like you can be a bad gossip in person, but you can be a really bad gossip on the internet. And likewise, we can have conversations like the one we're having right now across time zones, maybe even continents. I don't know where all you all are right now. And it's connected and it's nourishing. It's productive. So the technology can bring us together. The technology can also drive us apart. It takes some discernment on our part as human beings to decide where do I engage and how do I engage. Because the stuff that's easy to engage and releases all the dopamine, that's usually the way that we're kind of assholes online. But there's this other stuff, it's like a slower rhythm, a more heartfelt thing. It's not that instant dopamine hit, but it's more the kind of connection that happens over a long conversation. It's more of an oxytocin release of connection. That is also possible with the internet.
Oh no, this was a private message from Lionel. Lionel, I can't read a long message while listening to Michael.
Yeah, you can text it to me. I can read it. I can multitask.
I am not a multitasker, and I'm really trying to embrace the whole Zoom technology, and I'm having a hard time with it. I'm really.
So what's the hard part for you?
I don't get the satisfaction of the heart-to-heart connection.
But you're doing it right now.
But I don't get
doing that right now.
No, there's something. I mean, you're right. You're right. It's there. There is something of value here. I'm not arguing that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You have to drag me into it, kicking and screaming. There's a lot of resistance. It's
you don't look like you're kicking and screaming to me. You invited all of us to this. That does not look like kicking and screaming. That looks like an invitation.
An hour and a half a week. And I know, and I really love the people who've got Simon too. You've got your camera turned on. And Zeph has got his camera turned on too. I really appreciate that. It makes all the difference for me to be able to look at somebody's and to have people starting to have relationships outside of, like Lionel, you've been talking to Zev, and then you were talking to Guru Hari. There was like a whole tea conversation going on after the last talk, and that's really great. So yeah.
When the world is going down, you make the best of what's still around. That's how I see it.
That is clearly a line from a song, but I can't remember which one. What is that?
The Police.
It's from the Police. Okay.
Like the same old Tammy show, same one I've had for years.
Oh,
The world is going down. You make the best of what's still around. Right?
I'm reaching for the chocolate.
Classics, man. Yeah.
That's a classic.
Relying on the classics. Yeah.
Yeah, but part of me right now is also just wanting to shut I've really stepped back from Facebook, and I know you have too recently, because
Yesterday.
Congratulations. Because what I see on Facebook is people is the conversations on Facebook are people raise questions and they want to make each other wrong. It's about proving you're right and making the other person wrong. Whereas I love disagreements. I love when somebody has a different opinion from mine, because that's the creative space where learning happens for both of us. And that is it's just not happening on Facebook.
There's a saying in the Talmud, any disagreement or debate for the sake of heaven will prevail. Any debate or disagreement without, for the sake of heaven, will not. So when people are just interested in pushing their egotistical point of view, all it does is create further agitation. If two people are already agreeing in context with a core principle of life, and they're debating with that, then it creates a broader band of knowledge. It expands knowledge. So that's the problem with Facebook right now. There are little groups, little cloisters where we can do that, and I think we are able to do that. Some of our user groups. Also, Instagram I like because it's a lot of beautiful pictures and photos, and you can put something down without that snarky debating that Michael's talking about.
Are you on Instagram, Zev?
Yeah, I don't post that much, but I find beautiful pictures of tea and people making tea, and flashcards for acupuncture points by these artists in Holland, and beautiful nature scenes which I want to just dive into, into forests. I mean, it's very nice. I have a Yosemite site up on there, and every day I get an update on Yosemite. It's wonderful, and none of the political, that we're dealing with out there right now. So,
yeah, I feel like we have to be very attentive to how we curate our attention these days.
Oh yes. But getting back to the sunscreen, I just wanted to make one quick point. And Sabine, I think that a translator's job is not to come up with a perfect translation, but to provide an open-ended window into the text that people can further investigate. And I think that takes some of the pressure off you and Michael, anybody, or myself, when we're trying to, get to these ideas. But I read something from Volker Scheide last week. He wrote a thing about Yu Chang, who was this physician, Qing Dynasty physician, who entered a Buddhist monastery for a while, and then he left after a few years. But he started his own training of physicians based on the rigor that he observed in the monastery, like a discipline. And I think that aspect of discipline, which is teaching yang sheng, is very important for this generation of practitioners. So it doesn't just turn into a technique, people becoming technicians in the medical complex that's, already dying before our eyes. Do we really want to be a part of that? So I think Sun Tzu Miao's teachings for me, what I've been able to access have been a way to keep my center, keep my resolve, keep moving forward through easier times and difficult times like the ones we're having now. And this is what allows me to keep going, because it keeps renewing the medicine over and over again.
Mm.
Just wanted to bring that point into the conversation.
I really appreciate the word discipline. And it's taken me a long time to get here. Growing up in those freewheeling 60s and, discipline. And I think there is something very, we use the word cultivation in Chinese medicine, right? We like that word. But I think another way to say it would be discipline. And I think I know for myself, thinking of like fostering my discipline has been helpful for me. It is useful at times to have some beneficial constraints, because then you can go deeper into something, because then you can have a focus, because then it's easier to decide what's in, what's out. Is this for me? Is this not for me? Is this, furthering the path that I'm looking to go on? And it doesn't have to be, like a slave driver, cracking a whip over you. It can also be playful. I like Lionel just wrote in here as a loyalty and a faithfulness. But I also like to think of discipline as having an aspect of playfulness in it, right? If you don't have some of that,
like Zeph just
something to
doing
make
this.
it linghua, right? Then it just gets too tight. You need to
I'm
make sure it's
thinking
lively.
I'm thinking of these great images that I think Vivian Law posted on a British museum, whatever, the site that has all the medical illustrations. Steph, do you remember that?
Beautiful, yeah.
There's all these great Qigong poses, and the people are doing them. They're smiling. They're having fun. They're doing the monkey poses and the whatever. They're smiling and they're really joyful. And that just, when you were doing that totally, and that's what I felt like yesterday with the dolphin swimming in the waves. It was like, yeah, there's a joy. And at the same time, another way, like Sun Miao's writings that on the cultivating, nurturing. So there are all these words that we can use for cultivation. And one of them is yang, right? Nurturing, whether you're nurturing the shen, as in first tone, the body, or shen, the spirit, second tone, or the xing, the physical, the outer form, or the xing, the heavenly nature, or you're nurturing the ming, your mandate, your lifespan, or you're just nurturing life. So nurturing is one word. And then there's lien, like refining, like metal, refining. And then there is the neiye, the inner, right, that Taoist text, the inner training. Let me see if I can neiye, this one. Like, so there are all these different words that are used for cultivation, training, refinement. And then there's that, even the word jing, the other jing, which is what you end up with. That jing, which is the same character as essence, but sometimes jing refers to a quality of essentialized, where refined, where you're cutting it down, where you're cutting out all the extraneous stuff. Does that make any sense?
Yes, definitely.
This is one of the beauties of the language. Chinese is very playful this way, but it also is quite illuminative when you start looking at it like this.
Illuminative.
Illuminative. I don't think
I
that's
like
really
that.
a word, but I just made it up. So there you go.
Well, and talking about illuminative, that's Ming, right?
Yes. Michael, you have it right behind you on your scroll. Ming.
Busted. Yeah, it would be Ming. Yeah, Ming is illuminative. That's, yeah, 就是吧.
And
Yeah.
it's this beautiful concept. I was just talking to a student yesterday, who is fluent in modern Chinese and who has hired me to teach him some classical Chinese. This weird quality in classical Chinese where a character is a concept of meanings. It's like a sphere of meanings, and it can be as a verb. In English, it is always clear who is the object and who is the subject. The direction of the verb is clear. Whereas in classical Chinese, it is not clear. It can be active or passive, transitive or intransitive. So Ming can be shedding light, shining light, or it could be reflecting light, or it can mean that you are seeing the light, that you are seeing something as illuminating, that you're illuminated, you're illuminating, you are illumination. You are just bright. It's so much, and sometimes it's really hard to hold both in your head at the same time, like the character Shi, that means food, and it is a relationship between flavor and qi and jing, Su and Five, that there's a relationship of food, and you don't know which is feeding which is eating which. There's two characters, and they are connected to each other through the verb shi, which is this one, right? For food. And you don't know which direction the feeding is going. And as a Westerner, as somebody who needs to translate that, good luck translating that. How are you going to translate? It's either I eat you or I feed you. It can't be both at the same time, or can it?
Well, and I mean, this is where context is so important in Chinese. And this is also reflective of how context is so important in the medicine and when we're treating people. It's absolutely essential. You can't do Chinese medicine without the context. Or can you? I don't think you can.
I don't.
Anyone want to jump in on that? Anyone want to?
Well, I agree. I was thinking also that one of the things about translation and about these characters is that you have to be able to hold the contradictions and the layers of meaning, but that's true when working with a patient. You have to hear them on a lot of levels and hold it together to understand what's really happening. Because if you get caught in their symptom, you've lost them. You've lost who you're dealing with.
Come on,
Oh,
Zoe.
I like that. Yeah, you lost who you're dealing with.
I can't hear you. What, Zeph?
Always keep the chief complaint. I used to tell my students, I said, when I used to paraphrase Mao Zedong, I used to say, when I hear the term chief complaint, I reach for my gun. Because then you get lost, you lose the patient. I mean, yes, of course, those things are important, but we're treating people. And right now, the people are very challenged, and we have to have a very different kind of space for our patients, I think, during this pandemic, I've noticed. It's more the emotional, psychological, spiritual unease that's going around.
Well, I was thinking the other day that part of the virus is really the virus of what's going on spiritually with people.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, that, I mean, you can see it as coming from the emperor, that he's spreading the virus in many ways, but it's affecting people in so many levels.
Oh, yes.
And those of us
the
lucky
last
enough to
time
be stuck in the
that we had a
US,
pandemic
we
in town?
What would you say, Sabine?
I was going to say, do you know the last time we had a pandemic in town here in the United States?
100 years ago.
No.
Oh.
1968.
Oh.
Hong Kong flu. It was
Right.
a pandemic.
Oh.
Killed more people than COVID has killed.
Really? I don't
Yes. It
remember
was
that.
intense.
I remember
Summer of
the
Love, Woodstock, Martin Luther King assassination, Cities in
Yeah.
Flames.
Yeah.
Very reminiscent. It rhymes with today.
Yeah, 68 is in some ways feels very similar. And that was all over the world. I mean, there were things in France and England.
Yeah, very
China.
similar. It makes me really curious about like what what is the function of a virus within the biosphere in terms of evolutionary pressures, shall we say?
Sharon Weizenbaum did this wonderful talk that was available for free on her website about making friends with the virus as a new neighbor, establishing a relationship with a new neighbor that I thought was just brilliant.
I saw that. It was very good.
You saw that, Zev? I love it that we can see Zev's foot showing up every once in a while. This is now I can embrace that, Michael. Okay, I grant you that this is a benefit. This is taking the idea of having a conversation to a whole new level. That we can Zev doing his morning stretches and
My legs are up the wall right now.
that works for me. That's great. And then, yeah, Lionel, you posted this thing about lost Tianming. I mean, I don't even know where to go with that.
Yeah, where does that take you?
Well, I'm thinking about, and where it really takes me is, this is why I think none of us can afford to shut up right now, because Chinese medicine, to me, has so much more to give to the world than just treating disease. I feel like, and it's not just Chinese medicine, it's the way we look at the world, and the way, when I was teaching at NUNM, the way my colleagues like Brant Stickley and Bob Quinn and Heiner Fruow and Brenda Hood and I, the way we were teaching the students to have a different way of inhabiting the world, in a way of resonating between the microcosm and the macrocosm. And in order to be a physician, but it's about being an educator, it's about being a human being, it's about self-cultivation, whatever it is. It's about harmonizing heaven and earth. And that's what I feel like we all do. And that's why I got whatever sidetracked or back to my normal track on gynecology, because that's the thing about reproduction, where Chinese medicine has so much to teach us, because in our culture, like it's a traumatic, there's so much suffering that I see women in America going through in postpartum recovery that is completely unnecessary, but it's because we don't have a culture that supports women postpartum. And I'm dealing with my goat right now, and I took on this goat who is dying from mastitis that my friend was going to put down, and I've been spending like more than 2 hours a day massaging this goat and trying to get her to eat all sorts of healthy food. And this goat is like the perfect symbol for me of our lost Tianming, really, Lionel. That's really this goat is to me, because we've bred this goat to produce more and more and more milk, to the point where she is skin and bones, and she's completely unhealthy, because she's from a champion winning bloodline. And it's we've bred these goats, and just like cows with the BGH hormone, we're giving cows these hormones so that they make more and more and more milk, and then we have to pump them full of antibiotics, because they get so weakened in their system that they get sick. And that's a lost Tianming to me. That's a lost heaven and earth connection. So I see it in the goats. I see it in the environmental issues that we have going on. I see it in the virus, coming out of human nature interactions, that disturbance of that space. I see it in the lost Tianming of our governments. I don't know. What do you think, Michael?
Oh, I don't want to get into that discussion at this moment. It's just too fraught with peril. And
okay, but this heaven and earth, the role of us as Chinese medicine people, to that we have an well, no, that's horribly arrogant.
But what
We
do we have? We do have something. I would agree we don't have an understanding.
I
Or
think
we
that
have a limited understanding. Yeah, what would you call it? Because there is something that we actually bring to the table. Just trying to think of how we would say it without inviting some hubris to come in along with it.
I
here's the
know.
here's a problem that I see is that this pandemic issue, for example. I mean, Chinese medicine and other traditional medicines have a tremendous amount to say and teach to the public, and yet we're completely out of the conversation. I'm not saying that we should be, on the front lines and exposing ourselves necessarily without, hospital, but Chinese medicine hospital environment to do it in. But we have so much to share with the world, and yet everything is focused on the vaccine, getting the vaccine. And if you actually study about the vaccines and you look at what's going on, there's no guarantee there's going to be one, or that if there are ones, they're going to be rough and crude with side effects or require multiple doses. There's no simple answer in that particular realm. It isn't like treating smallpox. This is a much more complex disease pattern that's going on that also ties in environmental and socioeconomic aspects. I posted an article on my Facebook page from the Santa Fe Institute, which deals with complexity theory and how they tie all these threads together and say we have to, if we overemphasize one, then another aspect gets worse. So if we overemphasize just the vaccination and something else will fall down. If we close things up too much, then economics and people's psyches will suffer. If we open up things too much, then the illness the pathogen will spread more. It's like we have to find that center in order to deal with the situation that's going on right now. And for me, it's not helpful to, like, I just woke up this morning, there's my cell phone, turn it on, and there's something from the Washington Post. Pebble Mine approved by FDA. Pebble Mine is at the headwaters of a river, which is the largest salmon run in the world.
Oh, right.
And the Obama administration already
Banned it.
denied it. And now, of course, this administration is trying to bring it back. Fortunately, there's enough lawsuits and hopefully a new administration the way that'll stop it. But this systematic dismemberment of the natural world makes it more and more pandemics possible.
Yeah.
This could be just the beginning. I'm sorry to be so political. I'm not a political type.
It's interesting. I heard Volker Scheid a couple weeks ago for the IASTAM thing, and he brought up something interesting. He said that usually we're the ones talking about patterns, and they're trying to do patterns in Western medicine now, but they don't do it very well because this disease has so many components to it that don't fit their normal kind of targeted idea of what's going on.
Right.
It's covering so many things. And so they're trying to do patterns, and they should be learning from us because we're much better at connecting and observing patterns and connecting them together. But as you know, they're not asking us.
They may at some point.
The Institute.
Yeah.
They
But
might.
it's
And,
interesting.
instead of looking at, oh, here's a component in an herb and we can use that as a pharmaceutical,
Right.
or here's an acupuncture protocol that helps with shoulder pain, maybe at some point they'll come to us and go, the way you look at things might be helpful for us.
They may. But it's interesting because Chinese medicine is moving in the direction of the pharmaceutical application of herbs, and people are coming up with these formulas that are for the symptoms. But classical medicine is really about the patterns and how they all connect.
Now you sound like Gregory Bateson.
Yeah. Focus of my practice right now, especially the acupuncture part. This is a saying that's attributed to someone in the era of Yu Chang, though not necessarily him himself, which is like moving a mountain with a feather. That's my motto in medicine. Yeah. And now I'm only treating one person an hour. I've deliberately slowed things down. And I just using the acupuncture to create a space for people to heal and reconfigure. And it's the only word I could use. It's magical when I get it right. If I'm on that day, that things just reconfigure and people come out renewed. And that's really what I'm trying to do. And it addresses all the various complaints that people bring in, a lot of which at this point are emotional, psychological. But, you know, and the environment is part of it, the space you provide for them, the care and the nurture. But, you know, acupuncture works miracles when you let it do so. And of course, I use herbal medicine as well. But really become simplified, and it's there's that new book that Sabine translated, The Yellow Emperor's Inner.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
So it talks about Zhang Zheng and being centered, getting to Zhong, getting to center, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Sabine wants to speak more about that.
No, that one was, I was on translation mode. When I translate, I just translate, and there's a step that has to happen, and it takes a few years where I translate something, and in order to teach, it's like what you were talking about earlier, Lionel, about you have to experience it. And like when I did Sun Smiao's pediatrics material, everybody's like, oh, Sabine, you can teach pediatrics now, right? It's like, no, hell no. I just translated that book. It takes me a while, because when I'm in translation mode, I'm really it's just passing through me, which is completely different from me inhabiting it and really understanding it. I don't know, Michael, does that make sense from your work with Huang Huang?
Well, I mean, I don't have your translation chops. What I would do, let's see, I mean, part of the Huang Huang book was that I'd spent time with him. So I was seeing how he was working. Part of it was that I'd read his book, originally, and it, kind of opened my mind up to other ways of seeing. But when actually doing the work of translating Chinese into English, I would always go through this phase where I translate it into Chinglish, because I can't quite get it into English on the first go through. The grammars are just enough different. The way things are parsed are just enough different. And I find that it would be like overthinking things, and I wouldn't get it if I try to go like directly into English. So like those people who can do simultaneous translation, whoa, they're like, they're like really curious. They're like aliens to me, right? They're just amazing.
Yeah, it's a totally.
So I would translate it into Chinglish, let it sit, come back and read it, and then take my Chinglish into English, along with whatever clinical experience I had, whatever questions I had. I was emailing Dr. Huang Huang, on almost a daily basis for 2 years, working on that book. Nice. So a lot of that book is not just the translation of what Dr. Huang Huang wrote, but my experience of puzzling the stuff out with Dr. Huang Huang in the process of translating it. So that's what went into that one.
Yeah, that's a very different process.
The purpose of the book is to pass it on, and then people make use of it, no matter what role one has in it. Like, even though I didn't translate my first book, I'm hoping people will move on with it. Like Justin Penoyer is writing a new book, and he's going to take aspects having to do ecological medicine from that book and expand on that and make another book. It's getting these ideas to spread and take new form and take root. And translation is just a part of that process, whether you are the pediatrician, Sabine, or someone like Stephen Cowan.
Exactly.
On children for decades, he finds something in those books that is very pertinent and useful for his patients.
That's the way I see this. That's the way I see my work making sense, is that you guys take it and turn it into clinical practice.
Which is what I did with the acupuncture book. And not necessarily the techniques. I mean, I already studied technique for so many years. It was more like finding the center of my own practice. What I got out of that book. So very simple.
To comment on the moving the mountain with the feather, Sun Simiao says this all the time, where you want to address a issue when it's tiny as autumn down, instead of waiting until it turns into the big giant March Mountains. So it's the same concept. And he says this it's all over that. So it's exactly the same thing. It's just a timing issue, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had, on the other hand, he has in what I was translating yesterday in his descriptions of these Brahmanic massage techniques, he's talking about doing movements like moving your hands as if you're drawing a bow with the equivalent of a force of 500 pounds. Or you're moving your head to the side as if you're pushing a mountain. So it's interesting how in the exercises. Zeph, it's gonna change the way you practice when you're visualizing.
Oh, that's definitely.
Drawing 500-pound.
The thing is, what we're dealing with now, there are people who are more towards the mountain end of that spectrum rather than the feathery down aspect. But they want to be healed overnight sometimes. But other people know it's a process, and that they have to be fully involved in that process of healing. And they have to take what they feel home with them and start creating change in their lives so they can get well. It also takes a lot of burden off the practitioner. Heal me now. Get rid of it. What can you do? Right? We don't have magic pills. We have the ability to help instigate a process of healing. Is what we have. At least as far as, yes, there is also the fast intervention. There's the Shanghang aspect of our medicine as well, of course. But most of what we're seeing, or what I'm seeing, are very complicated people. Will you guys agree? Zoe, Lionel, Michael?
Yeah.
It's very
I
complicated.
had a patient maybe a year or two ago, and he said something to me, and it's stuck with me. It's something I will say to my patients when they want to be fixed quick. He said, I would like to be able to heal at the fastest possible rate that nature will allow.
Wow.
And I was like, right? I mean, that
Where did
really,
that come from?
really, one of my patients said
And
that.
they're
And
just
so
that wise?
he just happened to be a wise person,
Wow.
right? Just happened to be a wise person. And yeah, we live in this world where medicine is basically transactional. It's an economic exchange. I don't have a judgment, good or bad, about that. It's just it's just the way it works here in our world. I'm fortunate that it provides me a livelihood. But healing is not that kind of an exchange. It's people. We know this. I'm preaching to the choir here. That people have to bring themselves to it in a certain way. I find part of my job is finding something in them, inviting something in them that is open, finding something in them that's open to the invitation for them to join in the process.
It was making me think of a paper that I worked on during this time of withdrawal from the world with Stephen Birch and several other people about dosage. And I had started it with Brenda Lowe and Dan Zizza a number of years ago, and Steve picked it up to expand on it. And a lot of it was focusing on, because in Toyohori acupuncture, we really focus on dosage and making it appropriate for the patient. So these were a lot of stories about how minimal dosage often made the hugest effect. And one of the stories I told was a patient who was brought to me by someone else who was having a terrible time with her. And I did one point on her, and she said, that's enough, I don't want any more. And I said, okay. And she wanted me to use the needle. She didn't even want me to use just pressure. And she came back and she said it worked really well. And we did this for several times, and I kept wanting to add another point. And she said, she finally let me do it because I said, this will just balance it a little more. And she called me from her car and said, no, that was no good. And she came back and what she said to me was, which I'll never forget, it was the biggest gift from a patient. She said, I'm paying you for your restraint. I know it's hard for you to just do one point. Isn't that amazing? I mean, it's just amazing.
I'm paying you for your restraint.
Yes. And that has affected me ever since. It is hard to do minimal treatment. You always feel like you could do a little more, and that's not always the best thing.
I remember.
Do you know who mostly doesn't trust acupuncture?
Who?
Acupuncturists.
Oh,
Right? Because it's like, oh yeah, there it is. But maybe a few more points just to cover the bases.
Or you want to make sure they feel like they're taken care of. Yeah.
That's called not trusting acupuncture.
Yeah.
I had a case in 1984. There was a young woman in her mid-20s who had just moved from Maine in her car by herself, and she was having heavy menstrual bleeding and what we call bungalow. And the doctors wanted to give her a hysterectomy, and she wanted to have kids someday. So we started working on the first couple of treatments went well. The third treatment, I just did back shoe points, and I did bladder 29, and she let out this blood-curdling scream and said, "Take it out." I took the needles out. She got dressed, and then she sat down. She told me her whole story. I just left a man in Maine who got me pregnant, and I got an abortion. I was scared. I ran for my life. I came to California, and I never talked about this to anyone, and I never dealt with this before. And the pain that I felt was not a physical pain. It was all this psychological, emotional pain tied into the body that was being released. And after that, she was able to accept normal treatment, and her cycle came back to normal, and she got pregnant a year later with a nice man that she married out of one acupuncture point.
Yeah.
Michael Brofman used to teach me that an acupuncture needle is like throwing a stone into a still pond. It sends ripples all the way out to the other side of the pond. And then when you put a needle in, you have to see its long-term effect as a ripple through time into the future. And what its future effect is going to be. So every point is very significant. There's no matter of factness about using needles in medicine. And I kind of view it like if you're out at sea in a little boat, and I've had friends who've done this. I had a friend who built a sailboat in Hawaii and sailed to Santa Barbara. If your compass, your sextant if your rudder is only slightly off, like an nth of a degree, instead of ending up in Santa Barbara, you'd end up in Alaska, right? You have to see where you're aiming your boat, where you're aiming the chi of that point when you need.
And you know, this is what Sun Miao talks about in the volume on dietetics, that you want to use the smallest amount of anything, because anything you put in the body has an effect on the chi. And
yes.
if you use drugs, it's like letting loose the military, and you don't know what havoc they're going to wreak, where they're going to go.
There's a metaphor for right now. Oh my goodness.
Oh God. We won't go there.
I recently had,
but I'm really worried about them.
But I think that if there's one message that I see in Sun Miao, it really is this thing about restoring equilibrium in a really, really subtle way, where if you've got something too far out this way, if you give it a strong medicinal drug, like in the Shenong Bensao Jing, that third category, the drugs that have medicinal efficacy, that have du toxin, you end up with this, but then you end up going like that. So you end up in a sailboat going like this and like that and like that and like that, instead of adjusting the course just very slightly like that. So I think
a lot of skill. I mean, to sail like that takes a lot of skill. To practice like that, it takes a lot of skill.
Yes.
Because we often don't know the dose that we don't. I mean, how many times do you hear people talk about over treatment?
Yeah.
not often. I
In
think people get
Toyohari,
over-
we do.
In Toyohari, you do. So,
Yes, very
but
much.
in like, you know, regular common
Regular
guard dog
no,
acupuncture,
no.
So
more
that's
good.
what Stephen Birch, that's so Stephen Birch has a connection with Brenda Lowe.
Yes, we're all practitioners of Toyohari.
Oh, that's so cool, because
Yeah.
I know Stephen I meet him like every year in Oslo.
Rothenburg, yeah.
And we've kind of become like good friends. We always take the train back to Frankfurt together and kill time. And he's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And I've never met Brenda, but she's in Seattle, and
Yeah.
we've been like totally passing each other. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if this paper will get published so that it's widely available, but they were working on it. It's quite a long thing. He has research in it and he has all sorts of other things. But the idea of dosage as being really important and it being very precise for the patient, that, you know, not doing that. The other concept that I think is interesting, it's not in that paper, is something that Elizabeth talked about a couple of months ago. She did a lecture on it, on G, which is in Lingshu G, incipience. And it's in Lingshu 1 about the place where things change, that you can't even see it, the change happening. And she got quotations from a lot of different old texts about it's in commentaries on the I Ching and so on, where you see, you know where the change will happen, but you can't see it moving yet.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the place where you needle.
It's pretty high level stuff. I tend to go, I'm not that attuned of a practitioner. I mean, I love the idea of it. I love the concept of it. When I look at my work, it's much more coarse than that. I tend to use more the great Western classic. You guys all know this one, right? The great Western classic of enoughness, right? You guys read that, right?
No.
You didn't read it? You all read it. No, you know what? I bet you didn't read it. I
No.
bet it was read to you. The great classic of enoughness. Your parents didn't read you Goldilocks and the Three Bears?
Oh yes. Okay.
I mean,
Very good.
I mean, I love these ideas. I love these concepts of that we can be at something before the beginning, and we can work on something as it's like just at the point of emergence, and that's lovely. But again, I am a much more coarse practitioner than that, and so I have to go with something seriously. I'm not kidding you. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's like, is it too much? Is it not enough? It's like, where is that zone of, it's right for this person and in this time.
But that's what you get from your patients. If you're really paying attention, you learn that from your patient.
That's what I'm saying. I'm kind of a dull tool, and I'm like constantly
not
learning it again and
necessarily.
again and again.
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, all of us are learning, you know. I mean, I've done things and said, uh-oh, that was too much.
Yeah, I have it happen all the time, you know. And
Yeah.
the thought that goes through my mind these days, I've got a really good idea. I'm going to do this. Oh, it's only 4 needles. This is going to be great. And I'll like do it. And I'll like check the pulse or the tongue or whatever. And it's like, yep, no, this is not the right thing. And I'll be like taking the needles out. And in my mind, I'm going, yep, another great idea proven wrong by reality.
Dear Michael, you're not a dull tool.
No.
Dull tools don't know they're dull.
Yeah.
No. And dull tools, they can be the most sophisticated machines out there with 20 degrees behind them who don't know. If you're saying that you're crude and that you're simple and I think that's really, that to me, that's the piece that I really treasure. And that is what worries me a little bit about where the profession is heading right now, is that people don't have enough of an awareness of how crude they are compared to where they could be, where the masters, where the potential of the medicine is.
Well, I think partly this just takes a lot of time and seasoning.
Well, you also need
and I want to say one other
coaching.
thing about masters for just a moment, because I'm sorry to interrupt, Zoe, but
Sorry.
this is a hot button for me. And, and then I want to hear what you said. We have this idea of the masters, and we love the masters, and we kind of worship them. We put them up on these pedestals. Oh, the masters, right? Maybe someday I'll be a master. I was praying to the universe that I would never have to live through the circumstances that would, require me to move to that kind of status, because most masters live through some really horrible shit. I've been shooting in my lifetime to be a competent journeyman. I just want to be good enough to help people. Good enough, capable enough to be able to be of service. But in terms of being a master, that's like being a shaman. Who would want that job? Ugh, that just sounds really difficult. I think there's a lot to be said for being a good, competent practitioner.
Right. And paying attention, which is what you were doing, which is what's really crucial, because a lot of people come up with formulas, whether it's herbal or acupuncture formulas, and just do it. And they get mad at the patient for not responding rather than
I gave you the right formula.
Yeah. Or just, like you said, I thought of this great idea. I'm going to do this on this patient. And then you realize that it was a wrong thing. I'm just helpful. My system is so sensitive that one of the things I discovered is if someone treats me without consciousness, I have a very bad reaction.
Yeah.
And even really good practitioners, if they're doing it in class and they're paying attention to teaching rather than me, I get a bad reaction, and sometimes really bad, like I'll pass out or something. It's just, I can't. But it's funny, I had a cat that was like that. I couldn't touch him without my attention being on him. He would bite me if I touched him sort of unconsciously on the side. So I'm like that. I'm made that way.
I've had to leave lectures by famous masters of medicine. I've had to leave because they were practicing, and it was disturbing to me to see how they were practicing, because it was so crude and invasive and just wrong. I had to just walk out and leave the room. I can't be around people practicing in a way that other people being treated incorrectly or something.
Your nature is more like me. I'm very sensitive to that, and the way you touch me makes a difference.
Well, a sensitive nature goes with the territory of the work we do, and
for some of us.
Well, I think in this group, definitely.
Yes.
I've also walked out of lectures, generally more in the spiritual Jewish realm than in the medical realm, because I probably wouldn't even enter a talk of someone I felt was not to my liking, sorry to say, in the medical world. But I had a rabbi once who claimed that, a visiting rabbi who claimed that the reason for the Holocaust is because Jews were becoming too secular. And it's like I got such a pain in my stomach. It was just before Passover. I waited till I could calmly get up and walk out. I didn't want to embarrass him. That's the other thing. You don't embarrass people, even when they're acting in such a heinous way. But yeah, I'm very sensitive to these types of things, and I think
I also want to respect and suggest and respect that our tradition is wide, and the kinds of people we see encompass those who are very sensitive to those who are much less so. And so for some of these teachers, Sabine, that you were talking about, it's hard for you to listen to them. There's probably people that they're really helpful for.
Yeah.
There's probably people who receive great benefit from their particular view, the way that they work, the kind of people where they are at that moment in their life. I think.
Well, whatever happened, I know this was making the patient, the person sick. No, this was not a treatment that was working. I mean, I get it that some people are really strong practitioners, and some no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about practitioners who are just practicing in a way that is inappropriate for the patient.
Zev, for you?
I would suspect that becomes a very self-regulating relationship, because if someone is coming and paying somebody for help and they're not getting help, they're not getting better, they're probably not going to stick around very long. I think there's some very,
It depends.
there's feedback loops. Like, this didn't help,
Well, it
and
depends
you don't go
because,
do, and then you don't continue.
well, but some people get intimidated by the practitioner who's Zev, are you there?
I think he's feeding a patient.
I was just remembering a conference in San Francisco that was probably 25 years ago. It was the first time I met Paul Unschuld, I think. It was after the book Medicine in China first came out. It was right at that time. And they presented, they had a patient come up, and all these different practitioners were examining this woman. And then I don't know why they let her stay in the room. I was really upset about it. It was a very large room. There were probably several hundred people there. I think Zev was there. I don't remember for sure. But they were competing with each other. Everyone was saying, all these people were saying, if I'm not the one who treats this woman, she's going to die. And she was sort of a normal, healthy person, but they were all like trying to get students on their side. I mean, it was one of Van Gie's assistants, and it was Worsley, and it was a couple of people from Shanghai, and I can't remember all the people, but they were, almost all of them were saying, in fact, one of them was the guy, the Korean hand acupuncture, and the guy who Shea Lu was translating, and he apparently said it in Korean that the woman was going to die if he didn't treat her, but Shea Lu wouldn't translate that. It was such an amazing experience to watch these people do this.
That sounds really cool.
I would call that malpractice.
Well, it was very upsetting, but it also exposed all these people as the kind of manipulation they were using with students.
I would call that malpractice.
Yeah, no, I was very upset, and I was really upset that they let the woman who was examined stay in the room. She heard this stuff, this crap.
Yeah, man, if I was that woman, I think, these acupuncturists, they're full of shit.
Well,
Listen to this crazy talk.
So not to interrupt this lovely conversation, but we're out of time. So I'm going to hit the stop recording button. I'm going to leave this on, but before I stop the recording, I just wanted to say, to wrap it up in put a little bow around it. Michael, I think this conversation has completely shown why I really asked you to come, and why I totally appreciate your voice in this profession and your work, because you are so balanced and grounded and humble and wise. And there are all these masters running around. And I think your voice is really important in our profession right now. And this conversation has really brought that home to me. And I'm really grateful that you that you were willing to come and share this time with us. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. I always learn so much, and yeah, you're just great. So,
well, I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate the conversation with all of you. Yeah, so often I don't even know what I think until someone's asking me a question or talking to me, and then I'm often incredibly surprised at what's going through my mind. I was asked recently to give a keynote at this for something, and it's like, I've got about 20 minutes of talk in me, and then I'm done, and I'm bored, and I don't even know what might be useful. But there's something about the context of exchange. It's very surprising to notice what arises.
Yeah, we touch things off in each other.
We really do, and
it's
things I'm deeply grateful for. Yeah, so thank you, everybody.
And I'm really glad that this turned into a multi-way conversation like this. So thank you, everybody who participated in the in the chats. And sorry, Lionel, your audio wasn't working. All the comments and this is really what I have envisioned the space to be, as more of a multi-directional situation. So thank you all so much.
Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Cheological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Cheological.